Welcome back. And so, we've been talking hugely about, corruption under different administrations, not just about this administration. So it will be one very big subject that we should, look into and project for 2025. If we must reduce, the cost of governance, government's wage bill, not just at the federal government level, but also even, in fact, if we looked into the subnationals. So this morning, joining us to have this conversation about fighting corruption, the fight against corruption, is Mr. Andrew Memedu, who is the Country Director, Action Aid Nigeria, who joins us from our Abuja studio. We also have, right beside him there, Mr. Demola Bakari, the Director, Public Enlightenment and Education, spokesperson for ICPC, who also joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to start with you naturally, Mr. Bakari. Last year, the chairperson of the EFCC drew Nigeria's attention to the fact that corruption is endemic, in fact, in the power sector. So institutional corruption appears to be a challenge. From the work of the ICPC, which is another institution that fights corruption, what are the findings, in terms of institutional corruption, public sector corruption, and, what are the gains that have so far been made by the Commission in tackling corruption in institutions?
Thank you so much. I want to say that it is true, corruption is endemic. It is true, corruption is systemic. It is equally true that it is institutionalized, sort of. But the good thing is that Nigeria is not resting. Nigeria has not accepted that as a fait accompli. Nigeria is doing something about it. Which is why most development partners, international agencies are supporting Nigeria's effort in fighting corruption. Be that as it may, dishonesty is on the increase. Both public and private sector, there is no difference, I must tell you this. But talking about the public sector, dishonesty is on the increase, transparency is on the decline, and people do not want to be held accountable. That is becoming clear. It's even getting clearer these days. But the anti-corruption agencies established since the year 2000, we are working towards ingraining transparency, enforcing accountability, and institutionalizing integrity, especially in the public sector. That is being done. We are going to continue to do that, and we are hoping that corruption will be reduced in Nigeria.
But specifically, in which activities do you find, this patterns of corruption? Is it in relations between the executive and the legislature in oversighting? What are you also discovering in the area of budgeting as well? Talk to us about some of the findings in that space. Sometimes they say it's not all funds that have been released for particular projects, that were returned, and they are not executed more often than not. What are also your findings in terms of contract execution, so that we can have an idea of where these activities of corruption are, endemic?
Part of the fighting for ICPC, especially with regards to contracts and government projects, most intervention projects in Nigeria are shoddily executed. When they are executed at all, the quality is something else. But what we have done, and we have seen all sorts of sharp practices, government projects being executed on a private property. It's a call to personalize that particular project. We have seen facilitators of the project laying claim to the project as their own. We have talked about budget padding very well in this country, and we have seen overinflated contracts, and we have seen non-execution at all, where projects are funds released and the projects are not executed. But we have taken a more pragmatic approach to solving this problem at ICPC. Yes, we have seen contractors returning to sites. We compel them to return to site, either to improve the quality of the project or to get it executed at all, where it has not been executed. And we have seen when the project is evaluated, we have seen a fund recovered from contractors, where we have found out that the project is overinflated, and they have received more money than the actual cost of the project. So we have recovered funds, we have compelled contractors to return to site, and we have made contractors to improve on the quality of the project they deliver to Nigerian government. It's all win-win for the people and for the government of Nigeria. But it has not been easy at all. It has not been easy, and the program, right. The problem keeps mutating. But we are up to the task, and we are going to do what we must do in order to get it right.
And the question is, what must
projects.
Right. The question is, what must we do, and how driven should we be in doing that? When you say it's a win-win, some will wonder how much of a win really is it? And I'll go to the country director of Action Aid Nigeria, Mr. Andrew Memedu, and just get a sense of your own side of this as well, because when you hear Nigeria's rating, for example, on the corruption index, you see we're 145 out of 180 countries. Yes, we moved a few spots, but 145 is not flattering at all. So really, is it a win-win how we're not able to really, as I say, nip it in the bud over 20 years after the establishment of agencies like the EFCC and ICPC?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think clearly the institutions that were set up in 2000, Code of Conduct Bureau, ICPC, EFCC, all of those that were set up, they've made remarkable progress. So I'll give you one straight example. ActionAid worked with ICPC about 4 or 5 years ago on constituency projects, and yes, this is corroborating what my colleague just said. In terms of repatriation, bringing back funds, we saw tractors that were supposed to be for public farms going to private farms. We saw ambulances being procured and sent to private hospitals with government resources. So all of those some of those were recouped. But that is not I think that is always going after medicine after that. So that's going after the issues when it has already been committed. This is a systemic thing, like you said, rightly said. It's not just within the public sector, it's within the private sector. We have, UNODC says we have about $18 billion annually being lost to corruption in the country, $18 billion. And that is more than half of our federal budget for this year. And it has, of course, huge implication. Even if you take that money, as simple as it is, you want to share it among Nigerians for the year, it's about 130,000 naira. Every Nigerian will get 130,000 naira. Those are the implications. So it is systemic from the executive to the legislative to the judiciary. So if you take our daily spheres of life, even as recent as yesterday, the Senate had to go to a closed-door session to discuss the proceeds fuel subsidy savings. Why should we go to a closed-door session? So all of those kind of things, they aid corruption. They help corruption to thrive. So it is seen that if you get into public system, even for us that are within the civil society, even as country director, you get calls, oh, we need contract. It doesn't work like that. So the system is programmed for corruption to thrive. So it's not just about, yes, it's not just about the federal government. It's both federal, state, and of course the local government. It's not just about the government. It's about the government and the citizens. It's about the private sector. It's about the whole system. So it's a whole systemic approach. So which countries have been able to do something to respond and deal with this kind of systemic approach? We have Denmark, we have China, we have Singapore, we have Rwanda. So these are examples of countries that have done something to respond to this. And until Nigerians, and when I say Nigerians, not just the federal government taking a lead, but yes, the president has to take a lead. If the president's body language speaks clearly to it. So we have seen cases where the president's body language speaks clearly to such issues. So if the president's body language speaks clearly to it, of course it will put more pressure on ICPC, it will put more pressure on EFCC, it will put more pressure on Code of Conduct Bureau. So all those agencies, the police, they will do their job. Even the judiciary, the issue of selective judicial processes, the issue of delay in judicial processes. So you have cases that EFCC, ICPC, they've taken to court and they run years and all that. We have several examples of politicians that have been allegedly caught in corruption, but of course those cases are being delayed. We have cases of pardoning by the judiciary. We have cases of ordinary Nigerians stealing. So you have the example of the chicken, the fowl, famous fowl. Somebody that spent about 10 years and also was sentenced to death for stealing a chicken. But of course, you have politicians that have been caught in the same web, and they just pay some form of levy or fee from their back pocket. But clearly, so these are issues that we are faced with. How would the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative work together to say this is it? If we have 18 billion annually being saved, even if we have 50% of that, even if we have 50% of that being saved from anti-corruption or from less corruption, that would go a long way in stimulating our economy. That would go a long way in reducing the issue of poverty. So you hear today, oh, we are hungry, people are hungry, people are going through a whole lot because of a mix of all of this. So yeah, government policies, government regulation, but corruption sits very, very squarely, sits at the center of what is happening in the country in terms of the standard of living. And for us to deal with it, we have to tackle it headlong.
So let me go back to Mr. Bakari quickly on this one. And I just want to point to a few cases. He has talked about some of them, how it looks like for petty crimes or petty corruption, the law comes heavy. But when it comes to grand corruption, or at least grand allegations of corruption, that's when you realize that there are ways around these things, right? The law is not as hard, and you have these people lawyering up. Well, I'd like you to speak to the case, for example, of former Minister Betta Edu. Till today, we've not heard anything. We've not heard a closure to that. And if this government says it wants to fight corruption, these are examples people look at.
Well, I want to disagree a little bit. Petty corruption, yes, theoretically it exists. But do you know that it is even petty corruption that gives the country the bad name that we have? It impacts more negatively on our reputation. I mean, be that as it may, I am not giving an excuse at all. Petty corruption, grand corruption, they are all bad. Betta Edu's case, I do not want to be accused of media trial, but I think the best thing in the particular instance has been done. She was removed from the office. I personally felt that we have gone through because there was so much hype about that case. We have seen, I mean, the incident. We have compared what the public service rule says and what power does she have to approve what she approved. And we have looked at it critically. And I must tell you that yes, what we hear in the media is quite different from what actually happened. And in the best interest of the public, public interest, she was removed from office. I think that will solve the. If there are issues, with regards to that, then certain things needs to be corrected in the system, and I think that is the approach of the ICPC. That's one of the reasons why we instituted something like ethics and integrity compliance scorecard, where we make our agencies and government functionary to comply with rules, as it were, not breaking the rules, not bending the rules, comply with it as clearly stated. And we rate, MDAs, ministry, department, and agencies based on certain criteria. We recently came out with with our findings for 2024, and we found out that most agencies of government are still neck deep in non-compliance. Some will not even respond to inquiries, as if they were shying away from being held accountable.
Mr. Bakare,
this yellow.
Pardon me, to quickly get clarity. So, as the case ended, will this be escalated to the court, or it is not a case that should be taken to court? That would mean that she's not guilty.
I cannot say for now. I cannot say, sincerely, I cannot say whether she's, it is not even the duty of ICPC to determine, or EFCC to determine whether somebody is guilty of it. But we must have a very tight case before we approach the court. Otherwise, we will just be wasting, public funds. For nothing. If there are, anything can still come up. If there are new information with regards to that particular case that warrant that ICPC or EFCC must go to court, why not? We will. But for now, it is what it is.
Well, Mr. Bakare, some would say that there hasn't even been any intentional attempt at prosecution, because there were other government officials that were identified as profiting from the details in the list of accusations against the former minister, and the case has been typically swept under the carpet, and perhaps we may not hear anything about it anymore. And the former minister may still be profiting from the government, but in a very silent manner, not as a visible public official. Well, still as part of the conversation, Mr. Memedu said some very, very instructive things in his earlier commentary about the body language of the president himself towards tackling corruption. And perhaps we could, glean one or two things from that space. What would you identify as, the body language of the president in tackling corruption when you consider, that as much as there is petty corruption, there is also grand corruption, but punitive action, for grand corruption is a mere slap on the wrist as against, what goes to people who, steal petty things. Mr. Memedu.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like I said, we all agree with that. Once the commander-in-chief takes a position, all agencies naturally will fall in line. And we recognize that we have not seen the current president take clear steps in terms of taking the front line in responding and dealing with this. We've seen, I'll go back. So if you go to President Obasanjo, during his tenure, it was clear. So Ribado was like one mini god because he had the backing of the president. He brought down an IG So that was because he had the backing of the president. The president, of course, was the one that set up ICPC, EFCC. So there were clear actions and clear measures that were put in place. So we thought that, okay, we have started, we are on a right course on the journey to fight corruption. And fast forward to the next president, Yar'Adua. Yeah, he did a bit here and there. President Goodluck Jonathan, of course, he did a bit here and there, but there was nothing compared to what happened in that first dispensation that I just referred to. So if now the President Tinubu has come in and spent over a year right now, the question is, what is his body language? What is his own approach? What would he be known for in terms of fight against corruption? Would he just be, so if you ask me, President Tinubu is known for implementing grand projects. So you have the Lagos-Calabar highway, you have the Lagos-Kano highway that is being built and all that. So those are grand projects. So he probably will be known for those. So maybe to revive the economy, President Tinubu is known for, of course, removing issues of subsidy, removing issues of increasing taxation. So he's a private sector-driven person. So that's what he's known for. But along all of these, you have a strong issue of corruption. How does corruption cut across this? And like we say, government projects are well resourced. So we have examples. We have projects that government has done, and of course, private sector have done. The difference is so much. Yes, we recognize that the the timing for government payment is delayed. So you can stay there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You've not been paid. But the amount that is earmarked for it, and then the quality of the job, the amount is high, and then the quality of the job is shabby. How do we get government project to be like the private sector? How do we institutionalize such things? I think those are the kind of demand we will be putting on the executive, on the legislative, in their oversight, so oversight function. But what we see today is everyone is so, people, when I say everyone, both the executive, judiciary, so even the judiciary is being fingered. There's corruption within the judiciary and amongst themselves. You've seen people that have retired and then coming to say, there is corruption within our ranks. We need to deal with the issues within the judiciary in terms of corruption. So even the judiciary, the legislature, their oversight function, but the president sets the tone. Basically, if the president sets the tone, I assure you from the governors will sit tight. We saw a president that was bent, maybe not outrightly right, but bent on removing, impeaching governors in the past just because of issues of corruption. We've seen former governors being sentenced because of issues of corruption. But now we are beginning to see a lot of selective trial. We're beginning to see selective engagement on issues of corruption when it comes to grand corruption. If you pick 419ers and all that, you have lots of them being arraigned here and there. You have some of them, of course, some of them telling you that, they have to settle this and all that. Recently, EFCC had to wield this rank of some of officials because they were accused of being corrupt and all of that. Well, yeah, those are good. But until the president takes that body language, uses that body language, and to be fair to the president and to the country, my constituency will have a huge role to play. The citizens have to wake up and hold the government accountable. Citizens do not have to celebrate politicians because you came into power. Or you came into power, then the next thing is, you are doing Thanksgiving in church, in mosque, and all of that. You are happy that you come into power. People are already thinking that, he's my person. Remember that we went to school together. They are calling you. Why are they calling you? Are they calling you because you have been called to serve? They say, congratulations, you'll be called to serve rightly. Or they are calling you like, okay, it's now your turn. What gets to us? So people get there and they think it's our turn. The truth is, somebody, my pastor once said that most people, you criticize all of these things, but when you get it, until you get there and you refuse to be corrupt. So you get to wherever you are, either in the private sector, in the public sector, in the media, wherever you are, you get there and you refuse to be corrupt. Then you have the right and to then point finger and say, yes, you will be able to hold that level of accountability. But clearly what we have seen is that is not the practice, and the president and the citizens. So it's a bottom-up approach from the citizens, demanding that from the government, and of course the president setting that tone, setting that body language, and ensuring that the whole system is in place, and we are working to have a reduce corruption and corrupt society.
All right. If indeed that body language is convincing in the administration's disposition towards fighting corruption, I'm coming to you now, Mr. Bakari. Are we seeing it in the prosecutions that will indeed assure the citizens that indeed the administration takes the fight against corruption seriously? Speaking of which, where is what's the current state of the case of former governor of Zamfara State, Yari? What's the case of the ICPC in the prosecution of that case? What we have heard is that there has been some forfeiture recorded, but is it producing any results that will be convincing enough that indeed the administration is serious in the fight against corruption? And we could mention other cases that the ICPC is handling, but I'd like you to speak to this one first of all. Mr. Bakari.
Yeah, the cases, corruption cases that are in court, I may not be able to, to comment on them. But one thing is clear: efforts have been made. Efforts are still being made, to get those, cases going. I can speak about, some cases of 12, 10 years that have been revived now. They were like, cold cases, but they have been revived under this present administration because they must be seen to their logical conclusions. So we are reviving, and to the extent that the government is not trying to influence or remote control the anti-corruption agencies. I think the body language is okay, but it can be improved. Mr. President can be more vocal, can speak more about it, and can better fund the anti-corruption agencies. We can introduce technology in his own ways. Looking at the anti-corruption in a systemic way. Credit. Credit is looking at it. If you introduce credit system in the credits facilities into the system, people with propensity to steal in order to be able to acquire things, we rather go and take credit and pay back later. That is systemic approach to fighting corruption. In his own way, he's doing his.
In 30 seconds, in 30 seconds, how many of such cases are being revived?
Lord, I know that there is one about the one concerning a professor. That was never a professor. Owning a degree awarding university here in Nigeria. It's being revived. I can't pinpoint them, but I think a lot. I can count about 5 that have been revived presently.
So how soon before the case against the former governor will be determined? Because it's been quite a few years. Yes.
But it's not in our hands to determine the cases. The judiciary have a role to play. We can institute the cases, but the judiciary determines how fast the cases will move, and so on and so on and so forth. But we are determined to see those cases to their logical conclusions.
Yeah. All right. Quite a revealing conversation in terms of, the level of commitment to the fight against corruption. We'd like to thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time on this segment and on the program. We've been talking with Mr. Andrew Memedu, who is the Country Director, Action Aid Nigeria, who joined us from our Abuja studio, as well as Mr. Demola Bakari, the Director, Public Enlightenment and Education spokesperson for ICPC, who also joined us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you.